Ambassador Tom Noring, thank you for talking to JoyNews. We're here at one of the facilities in Accra, obviously a place where you'd be doing something ceremonial, but it also signifies the long-standing relationship Denmark has with the people of Ghana. And what we're seeing today forms part of the cooperation you've been engaged in with the people of Ghana in the area of statistics. We'll talk about the areas that you've been working with the people on. But what are we seeing today, and why would you say this is significant and important to the people of Ghana and Denmark as well?
Well, thank you, first of all, to have me here outside, a wonderful warm climate. Enjoying that, of course. What we're seeing today is the launch of the second phase of what I characterize as a very, very successful cooperation in the area of statistics. We have something called strategic sector cooperation on statistics. We've had that for the last 4 years between Denmark's Statistical Service and Ghana's Statistical Service. It's a cooperation that has focused very much on, in the first phase, simply transferring knowledge and know-how and capacity from Denmark to Ghana's Statistical Service in areas where we might have had something interesting, important to share with our Ghanaian friends. This has been focusing especially on what we call administrative data. So what we have is, of course, you know much better than I do how statistics works in Ghana, and a lot of it is really based on the census that you do every 10 years, more than on what we call real-time data, administrative data. So you have your census every 10 years.
Right.
But if you can imagine making administrative or political decisions based on information that is maybe
real time,
5, 6, 7, 8 years old, you will not be making the right decisions. So you have to combine your census information with the real-time information. So take education, take health, whatever sector in society. If you want to make decisions, you have to have real-time information. So you need to combine these two things, the administrative data, which is often owned by the individual ministries, authorities, with the census data that gives you overall picture in order to have the total picture of what's going on. Let's just say if you were in the healthcare area, you were looking at vaccinations, the importance of vaccinations, we all know them, but we have to know in which areas. Should we vaccinate against measles? Yes, no. Do we have a clear picture of whether there are outbreaks or we haven't had measles for 20 years? It's very important to have that real-time picture to know whether that's what we need to do. Likewise in education, you need to know where are the young kids, have they moved from the north to Accra, to Kumasi, or is there still a great need for schools, for teachers, how many? You can only do that based on real-time information,
right,
not something that's 10 years old. So what we've really been working a lot with Ghana's Statistical Service on is exactly that, how to use
real-time
the real-time data that is, in this case, that I just talked about.
And I'm glad that you're
talking
by the
about
ministries.
That.
Yes.
About, because if you don't get that,
yeah,
how do members of parliament and members of government take the real decisions?
I'm glad that you're talking about that, because part of the criticism against many policies that governments in Africa have run is the fact that they lack data.
Yep.
What practical examples are you able to give about how data has helped your society in Denmark, and how, of course, practically speaking, by signing this cooperation, Ghana could be benefiting from such?
Yes. Well, what we've done is we've simply looked at how we've been working, because basically every country at the outset faces the same challenges as we just discussed. Then how do you then move on from facing challenges to finding the right solutions? And that's what we've basically been doing. Is we probably have a few years more of experience in the field of gathering data and using administrative data in the political decision making. So we've been looking at specific areas. Well, first of all, we've taken one step back and just looked at how do you actually develop codes, have the necessary training for the staff to be able to work with the information that you gather. And it can also be something totally different. It can be pricing, anything basically. But you gather that information, and we've looked at examples we've had, and the value of this corporation is that it's not driven by, let's say, classical development aid, where we bring in some funds and they will then be used in country. What we do here is we develop a cooperation amongst experts.
Right.
So we have experts from Denmark statistics working closely with experts from Ghana Statistical Service in the areas that have been jointly decided between Prof. Anim and the Danish Denmark statistics,
right,
to be able to focus and develop the necessary skills and competences in Ghana Statistical Service. So that's what we have experience from in the past, using the Danish technology, but also using the Danish experiences and transferring that know-how. Areas, we're still looking at that. We're still developing areas where we are going, and I mentioned education, something that we're working with the Minister of Education right now, how to gather all the information that they have, but they have it maybe piecemeal, and how to make sure that that is gathered in one place to be able to take the necessary decisions to expand, or maybe to draw down on in certain districts, certain areas, certain regions, in order to put the efforts, put the emphasis where the people are, where the kids are, if it was health, where we see the disease patterns.
Right.
So this is what we've been doing.
Yeah.
One thing we've also been looking very much at is the area of dissemination of information. Because one thing is to have information, and some people believe in the old saying that information is power.
Yeah.
So you keep it close to yourself, because that gives you power. Well, it may give one individual power or one sector power, but the problem is if you share that information, it becomes much more valuable, because then all decision makers, all those that need it, have access. But you need to disseminate to those who need access. So you need to disseminate information publicly, and this is also something that we have been struggling with for years in Denmark. But now, sometimes it's good to learn from experience, not only the good, but also where did we go wrong? Where did we make mistakes?
Yeah.
Where did we see the failing lines?
Yeah.
And then avoid those same mistakes to be repeated in Ghana. So some of what we've been looking at is how do we disseminate information to the public? And the public is very broad. It is the general public.
Yeah.
In some cases, it's important that the public is informed of general issues. But it's also very important that you disseminate to the academia, those who are studying and making the background studies for future decision making. So involving the academia and give them access to information, as it is important to give access to information to
the general
trade
public,
unions and Federation of Industries, so that you have the employers and the employees all having the same information, enabling them then to have a solid, substantial discussion on where to go.
We'll talk about some of the legal regimes we already have. For instance, the Right to Information Act, which is now allowing information, but information is also coming in the age of disinformation. I'll take your thoughts on the technologies and how to, of course, deal with disinformation, which is on the rise. But just picking up on data, for instance, there's a youth bulge in Ghana, of course, looking at the data, the fact that you have a growing population of the youth, and they're not having the corresponding economic opportunities as well. How will, for instance, this intervention in the area of statistics that you're coming through with be helpful in adequately planning, for instance, for the youth? Many of whom do not have, the economic opportunities as compared to your country.
I understand your question, but it's not an easy one. It's a very complex question, but it is something that it's a challenge, or a multitude of challenges that not only Ghana is facing, but a number of countries.
Right.
I would be so brave as to say probably most countries on the African continent right now are facing a youth boom. I think the average is that every African country almost has somewhere around 60% of the population, over 50 at least, who are under 25.
Yeah.
So clearly there's a pattern here that needs to be dealt with,
Yeah.
because these young people are going from childhood to youth
And then
into work life,
Yeah.
or should be going into work life.
Right.
What are the opportunities? But having exactly going back to the value of statistics is that you will then have the actual numbers also. Maybe I'm just mixing things up here
Yeah.
now and bringing them into the conversation. Now you will have the Ghana card. You'll be able to register exactly how many people you are, exactly who they are. So you get the age demographics here. Then you can use it also for the geographical demographics, the gender demographics, all these issues that are important to look into the, let's say, into the crystal bowl of the future.
Yeah.
If you know how many young people are going to be out there in 5 years, in 10 years, looking for jobs, you can then prepare those young people for that job life in the future. To put into your education system, how many do you need to educate?
Right.
But you don't educate everybody to become a lawyer or a doctor. That would be highly unuseful.
Right.
What is useful is to make sure that you have ample education institutions for the future, for the number of people that are being educated,
So
for
that
the
you're
needs
effectively
also
able to plan.
of the country in the future.
Right.
How many doctors do you need?
Yeah.
Looking at how many people are in the country, how many doctors do you need based on age demographics, so you know by
Yeah.
for certain that the very young will need more medical care and the very old will need more medical care.
Right.
So you can look at how the demographics in terms of age are important for the care,
Yeah.
the healthcare, and
then
the healthcare
effectively-
institutions can be
Right.
dimensioned, so
Yeah.
to speak.
Yeah.
Again, you take decisions on hospitals, clinics, where in the country should they be. You look at the regions, the districts, where do you need the hospitals? You only know that
If you
really
carry on,
if you know the numbers.
the data. Yeah.
So that's how you will bring in all this data as a productive means. Will that solve all problems? No, of course not. There's only that much you can do. Then you have to get into a lot of other issues
Action.
of how do you build up your society, how do you strengthen the quality of your different industries, how do you make your industries competitive in order to be able to trade with the rest of the continent, so that you can generate the necessary income and the necessary jobs for those young people.
But at least
to
we've
come out in the
established
future.
that the data is definitely necessary
You
for
do, you
us
have a
to
starting
make,
line, a
yes,
platform.
to progress. Now into the age of disinformation, information.
Yes.
Let's put it that way, because technology has advanced. Many have access to social media. Yes, the data will come out, but when the information is out, there's a tendency of misrepresentation and the peddling of falsehood, which is so much found on social media now. What's your take on, this age that we've moved into? And yes, we'll have the data, but how do we ensure that we have accurate information out there to the general public?
Hugely difficult problem to tackle. It is a global problem. I'm no doubt that we will all face it. We do all face it. We can go back to elections in the United States, Russian interference, it has been an issue. We can go back to the elections in the United States where somebody said that the elections were faulty, that whatever one says is fake news against what the other one says.
Right.
And it is hugely difficult. It is happening every day, everywhere we speak. It is definitely also happening in the African continent, and it is happening right here in Ghana. There's let's say the traditional press, the traditional media is one issue, and then there's social media. Social media is seriously difficult to tackle because by its very nature, it is individuals posting information at their own right and discretion, and for the recipient of that information to make the choice really of what it is. But there is a responsibility on those who disseminate it through, or the vehicle for the dissemination, Twitter, now X, Facebook, Instagram, what have you. But it's very difficult. We do know that X and Facebook have taken decisions at some point to not allow certain kinds of information out there, to at least limit the amount of fake news or disinformation being spread. But easy it is not. It is also not easy for the traditional media, whether it's the media houses, newspapers, television, radio. You have huge challenges with some media are very small, they're not really regulated. There might be some regulation, but they're not really following it.
Right.
I think in Ghana you have somewhere around 800 to 900 radio stations.
Right.
How do you do fact checking on all of those and ensuring that they are all within a certain range of fact checking?
That's going to be a challenge as well.
It comes with the responsibility of the media houses. At least you start there, make sure that the media houses feel responsible. It comes even before that, you could say, with the training of journalists, to make sure that you are not running after, the news flash story, but are actually doing your investigative journalism, making sure that that's what you want. You don't want to present a story to the people that are going to read your newspaper, watch your television station, listen to your radio station, if it has not been fact-checked, at least to the point that you're capable of as a journalist, as a serious journalist. So a lot of it comes with the training you have as a journalist. Are you running after the news flash story, or are you running after the well-researched, documented story? Which, again, comes back to the media house to take certain decisions. Are we going to spend the extra time and money, because it is time consuming and it is costly to research a story properly. But when it comes out, you'll be sure that that story holds water.
And it's factual.
It may be so that something else happens, because the real world is also full of stories and different versions of the story. So you're not safe in any way, but at least you've done your job as a journalist to fact check it.
I see.
But does the media house, does your editor-in-chief allow you that time as a journalist to do that research? Or are you already, after this interview here, running after the next story because something happens out on the street?
But at least it's good that
something has to be done, and I think one of the steps is that the media houses, the proper news, so to speak, traditional news media, that they actually make sure that they don't just buy the social media stories and incorporate it. Sometimes it's easy. It's right there in front of you. It seems newsworthy because everybody's going to say, wow, can that be true? But at least make sure that you have talked to both sides of a story.
Yeah, just to be sure. And
we need to train to do that. And it's not going to be perfect.
Not
in any country.
Yeah, I was just about saying that's why we have, for our side, strategic cooperations with the likes of the Ghana Statistical Service in terms of putting out the accurate data. But beyond that, talking about the Denmark-Ghana relations, we know that there are three other, areas of interest to both countries. There is the issue about water, for instance, where you're working to deal with the challenge that we normally face, not just in Tema, but this is a Greater Accra problem. Late last year, the Ghana Water Company coming out to say we're facing shortages due to a myriad of issues, capacity issues, ability to produce, and so many others. But Tema appears to be paying the price for it much more than the other parts of the country. First off, what kind of collaboration are we going to see between Denmark and Ghana in terms of dealing with this looming water crisis that we're facing?
Allow me maybe to go back just a few steps on that. Denmark has been active in Ghana for 3 decades, more than 3 decades, as one of the major donor countries to Ghana, with millions of Danish kroner being spent in different sectors. Over the years, changing patterns, one sector, then another sector, agriculture, infrastructure, rural development, private sector skills development. One of the sectors that has clearly been part of our development aid has been exactly water, where Denmark for many decades has had a very well developed industry. So we have, let's just take an example. that we have in Denmark a leakage in our water system,
Right.
which amounts today to about 5 to 7% that leaks out of the pipes.
Right.
So from producer
To the
to consumer, 5 to 8% is lost.
Right.
Compared to Ghana, where it's somewhere around 50%. So there we have a lot of experience over many years how to detect leaks and how to then mend the problem, because there are many ways of doing that. So that's what we have been doing. So based on the many years of being here in Ghana, knowing the issues in Ghana, knowing the needs, because today still a large number of Ghanaians need access,
Right.
direct access preferably, but at least close access to clean and affordable drinking water. So how can we then assist with that? And one thing, the borehole, that
Right.
was in the old days, that was part of what we did. We helped out drilling boreholes, getting water out.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's also a good idea to fix something instead of
Just drilling more. Balls.
drilling more,
Yeah.
then try to fix it. I would say the same with energy. We can find new sources of energy, or we can maybe do some things more energy efficient,
Right.
insulating houses, etc., etc., etc. But here in this case, one of the things we've been looking at in our cooperation with Ghana, and that's a cooperation that's between the second largest city in Denmark, Aarhus, and the city of Tema, and the water utilities. In Ghana, it's Ghana Water, as you mentioned. In Denmark, in this case, it's Aarhus, the city of Aarhus, their
Right.
own water utility, which is one of the most prominent, well-functioning in the world. How, taking that experience and working with it, with the Ghanaians, to build up a well-functioning system where you lose less.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that from day 1 to day 2 you will get from
Everything,
50% loss to 8% loss. But let's just say you lost from 50% to 30, you reduce it from 50 to 30% over a few years.
Right.
What does that mean in terms of access for the people who need the clean water, and also in terms of the economy, because what is lost is also lost in terms of government funds. You need to drill for more clean water
Right.
to access it.
Right.
So that's one part of it. The other part is what do you do then? We use the water, but it comes out in many ways, whether it's household water or it's industrial water, it comes out in a different form, so to speak. It's not clean anymore. So do we just let it out in the water streams? Do we let it out in the ocean? Is that what we want to see in our oceans for the fish, etc.? Or do we want to find ways of treatment so that you can ensure that the water that comes out is treated so that
So
you
there's
can reuse it?
sustainability, yes. So
Which is how, again, another area where we've had a
Your
lot of
focus.
experience in Denmark with
Yeah.
water treatment plants
Right.
of different sorts, which are very successful, most of them. Some are probably not, but that's how you develop.
Right.
Over time, you also, as I said before in another context, you also learn from the mistakes. And why not learn from the mistakes we made and don't make the same ones? If you want to make some mistakes, make some new ones at
Right.
least. So we see a lot of opportunities here in the cooperation for the future. So this is what we're doing in the area of water. We're also hoping that we can move into where this Tema cooperation becomes a role model, not necessarily for Danish Ghanaian cooperation, but simply a role model on how to do things so you can scale up and use the same model different places in the country.
Right.
We're also now looking at how we can build up training facilities together with Ghanaians, so that we're sure that those who are working on these issues, the guys out there in the field, are well trained to do anything from leak detection
Right.
to fixing the pipes and so on and so forth.
Right. And so going into the future, what
Yeah.
will be your final message in terms of your outlook of, Denmark-Ghana relations, and what would be, your expectation going forward in terms of the level of cooperation you'd want to see from the people of Ghana?
Well, I think what we're doing right now, and I have to admit, we're not in the big scale delivering development aid anymore, but we found a new model, we believe, and based on the rollout here in Ghana, but we're also doing it many other places in the world. Vietnam, Indonesia, Morocco.
Right.
We're building up this model of what I think is a very, very sustainable model of assistance through capacity building. So that instead of, you can say, putting some money into something that runs out after a year, you put in strengthening the capacity of the country where this is going to work in the future. So that you have a very much stronger Ghana Water, Tema Municipal Assembly, etc., to do this themselves in the future in a proper manner. We hope that that will work here as we have done in the maritime sector. It's a third field that we're working in, where we've gone from working on regulations. Denmark is one of the biggest shipping nations in the world. We're a small country of 5.8 million people. But when you look at the ships out there in the Gulf of Guinea, about 35% of all those ships out there are Danish operated, owned, or flagged. So we have a lot of experience there. We've tried to give a lot of that experience on to Ghana Maritime Authority from the Danish Maritime Authority. Shipping nation to a nation that receives all the ships in the port of, well, mainly the port of Tema, but also the port of Takoradi, for instance. That experience can be taken on board and be used in the future. Now we moved into a new area where we are looking at green shipping, green ports and green shipping, because as we all know, climate change is something we all need to deal with, and that also goes for the maritime sector. So why not assist in an area where we have a lot of experience and competences? So that's where Danish Maritime Authority, Ghanaian Maritime Authority are working together. Another area.
And I thought that would have been the last, but briefly on the maritime situation, the Gulf has not been safe for many who ply their trade there because of the piracy issues. Is this of concern to you, and how do we tackle this?
Well, it is a huge concern for us. Outside these development areas, we also have a maritime security program with Ghana. Actually, it was with Ghana and Nigeria to start with some 8 years ago, I think. So it's quite some time we've been on the way. In the beginning, from Denmark, we tried to assist in building up integrated maritime strategies, security strategies, but also as a foundation for getting piracy legislation. Now we moved on also to assist on the military side with building up the capacity of, for instance, your special maritime forces, the special boat squadron, where our maritime experts, security experts, you can say the Danish Navy SEALs, if you ever watch American TV, or the equivalent of that, has been training and are now mentoring the Ghana Navy Special Boat Squadron, so that they will have their own capacity to battle that challenge that piracy has been and still is potentially. Not as much as it was a few years ago. It went down a couple of years ago, but it's still there, it's still a threat. But combining that also with the other threats that we have out there. Illegal smuggling of drugs, illegal smuggling of weapons, human beings, and illegal fisheries. All those are also challenges that we all need to deal with in the Gulf of Guinea. The countries, the coastal states need to deal with it for their economy. It's very important. We have a very natural interest as a shipping nation, with 35% of all ships out there being at risk of also dealing with this. So we're dealing with this as a team now, not only Ghana and Nigeria, but we are in our maritime security program working with a whole string from Côte d'Ivoire through Ghana, Togo, Benin, Nigeria, and even Cameroon, where we train civilians and military personnel dealing with these issues.
Ambassador Tom Norin, thank you for talking to us.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you.